The President of the United States, the leader of Russia, showing up at what was billed as a press conference. No questions were taken from the press. Let's kick off this special coverage with an all-star lineup. Nicole Wallace, host of MSNBC's Deadline White House. Former U.S. Ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul. He's an international affairs analyst. Jen Psaki, host of The Briefing here on MSNBC. Ali Velshi, host of MSNBC's Velshi. And Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California. It is good to see you all. Ambassador McFaul, you and I got to watch this together, scant on the details.
No details. Yeah. Absolutely no details. The word that jumped out to me in the translation, and I want to emphasize that, when Putin was speaking, was the word agreement. He said we had an agreement. President Trump didn't underscore that. So we don't know if there was any agreement at all. There were no details at all about what was discussed, other than it was a very, very good meeting. It was an extremely productive meeting, but we know almost nothing about what was agreed upon, which leads me to wonder if there was any agreement, in fact. You can call it what you want, but if there was a real agreement, we would know some details. That we don't know anything is striking to me, and that this was a press conference, and then they walked away taking no questions suggests that probably there wasn't a lot that they wanted to discuss with the press.
Nicole Wallace, no details, no agreement. What then was the point of this meeting?
Well, I think the press conference underscored something that Ambassador McFaul and Ali Velshi and I have been talking about since 4 p.m. Eastern. I mean, this was, for Trump, a television production that may have been rooted in different motives, but one of them was likely to change the topic of news coverage. It succeeded in that. We've all been covering this all day, for better or for worse. But clearly, Trump was not in control of anything. I mean, Putin was the alpha all day long, from Trump holding on his plane and waiting for him like a, middle schooler waiting for their first date. The red carpet that rolled out and the choreography. I mean, I went to dozens of foreign trips with the president. It is very rare to have a red carpet and then an ascent to a platform and then a walk down the stairs into a limo together. I won't say it's never happened, but it's exceedingly rare, to the point that I can't think of it ever happening before. And then Donald Trump, don't stand between Donald Trump and a scrum of reporters asking questions if you don't want to be stampeded. There's no way it was Donald Trump's decision or request to take no questions. He'd be talking until 9 p.m. Eastern if he'd been in control of anything that happened today.
It began, Ali Velshi, with Putin calling the U.S. and Russia dear neighbors.
Yeah, talking about how close
we are. There was a history lesson about Alaska somewhere in there, and then it ended with an invitation for the President of the United States to come to Moscow.
This is like my lunch every day. It's a lot of production and not many calories. The Alaska, as a Russian colony until 1867, it was going in a direction that Donald Trump, I don't know if he's read up on that. Then he talked about...
no, he got a history lesson here, too.
Yeah, no, he talked about... Putin said the relations between the United States and Russia have fallen to their lowest point since the Cold War. As if that just kind of happened, right? Like we just grew out of touch. Some grass has grown between us. He did say that they see Ukraine as a brotherly nation, and naturally the security of Ukraine should be addressed as well. Again, forgetting, and with Donald Trump, he wouldn't remember this, but in 1994, there was an actual agreement when Ukraine had the nuclear weapons, and they said, we're going to give them up if you all, United States, Russia, France, the UK, nuclear powers would guarantee our territorial integrity. Didn't happen. So this was not only not an agreement, and I think Nicole will remember this from her days in government, and Ambassador McFaul will remember, sometimes agreements don't come, and sometimes there's a communique that's put out. Sometimes there's an agreement for something else to happen. This was just like, what did you guys talk about? What happened here? You came out and just had a few niceties for each other and an invitation to Moscow. What actually happened? Because this was billed as the thing that was going to be the end of this war that Donald Trump was going to impose on his first day in office. Then a few weeks ago, he said, this is more complicated than I thought it was. Apparently, it's yet more complicated because we are no further away than we were 3 hours ago when we started talking about this.
Congressman Swalwell, if you are a Republican in Congress who has in the past been an advocate for democracy abroad, what are you thinking as you watch this meeting, this whatever you want to call what it is that you and I just watched?
If you're a Republican in Congress, you just saw a Kremlin kiss ass in the President of the United States, somebody who squandered an opportunity to confront a ruthless dictator who is killing innocent children and kidnapping innocent children every single day. I don't know what this meeting accomplished other than taking the Epstein files and inflation out of the news, but you have meetings like this to achieve objectives. You don't just have meetings like this to gather the gang together. It was embarrassing to watch. It was frankly more embarrassing than the Helsinki conference because he toasted Vladimir Putin as if he was receiving a lifetime achievement award, a total nothing burger, a waste of time.
So just to recap, Nicole Wallace, we knew coming into this that just the invitation to meet with a U.S. president on U.S. soil for the first time in 18 years was a gift to Vladimir Putin, that he, regardless of what happened today, he was going to be able to walk away and sell it as a win to the Russian people. What does Donald Trump have to sell to the people of the United States?
Well, I think you have to look at what he's engaged in right now. And what his chief political imperative is right now is to get his own base of supporters to stop asking him to release the Epstein files. And so Tulsi Gabbard and John Ratcliffe are engaged in an effort to manufacture a narrative about the 2016 intelligence assessment. And what's interesting is that as little as was discussed, Donald Trump spent the most time talking about what he calls him Vladimir, what he and Vladimir have been through together. And he referenced the Russia hoax a half a dozen times. I mean, Vladimir Putin in Russia is proud of his efforts to interfere and meddle and weigh in and have a say in the 2016 election. Vladimir Putin was also touting a very mission accomplished, if you will, message before he left Russia. So the sort of either willful ignorance on Trump's part about how much Putin gained just through the invitation before his plane ever left Russia, and how much time Trump spent on his political mission, which is to deflect from the scandal over the lack of transparency about the Epstein investigation, to divert all that heat and energy among his own base of supporters to a phony narrative about a Russia hoax, seemed to take up more time than just about anything other than flattering Putin today.
Which I think, Ambassador McFaul, is the best window we have into what happened in that meeting. The fact that you had Vladimir Putin saying this is bigger than what happens with Ukraine, touting potential trade with the United States, talking about possibilities when it came to digital, to Arctic exploration, to space, and Donald Trump airing old grievances. And that whole piece about if he had been president in 2022, well, then none of this would have happened.
Yeah, he definitely added that on for President Trump. That was his one gift to the president. I would say that one phrase. Right. To the best of my knowledge. Of course, we don't know what they actually agreed upon because they didn't tell us.
If they agreed on anything.
And if they would have done something, they probably would have told us. But I think by my measures, I mean, I've organized these kinds of presidential summits. We judge them by the deliverables. That's a State Department term. What did the American people get out of this meeting? Are we better? Are we more secure today than we were yesterday? Are we more prosperous? Have we defended our democratic values? I don't see any evidence that we're better off. Most certainly our allies in Europe are not better off, and I don't see any evidence that our Ukrainian partners are better off. But even the minimalist standard for success that the president himself set, not me, he said this is a preparatory meeting for a trilateral meeting. And I thought that was the minimal bar that we would get in this press conference today. And he hinted at it. He said, I hope to see you soon, Vladimir. But he didn't announce it. Right. So even by his own objective standards of success, he did not achieve that minimalist objective.
So, Jen Psaki, given that that minimalist objective was not accomplished, do you think it is fair to say that Vladimir Putin today schooled the U.S. president on U.S. soil?
Well, yes. Look, I think we, as everyone's been saying, we have very little knowledge or understanding of what happens in that meeting. Just to give you a little story personally, I was walking across the bureau and I missed the first 2 minutes of the press conference, and I sat down and messaged the team and said, I must have missed what they said they agreed to, because there haven't been any details that I understand, and there keeps being references to an agreement in a next meeting. But the thing that has struck me about today, and certainly after that press conference, is For a decade now, Vladimir Putin has been isolated on the world stage. You know, the G8 became the G7. He was an international pariah. He wasn't. He's under. There's a warrant for his arrest by the International Criminal Court. And today, that isolation ended, and he was welcomed back on U.S. soil. And it doesn't. It matters what comes out of the meeting, and certainly we should all root for an end to the war in Ukraine, as Ambassador McFaul keeps saying, and that is absolutely true. But that is the big victory for Vladimir Putin today.
Ambassador, if you are Volodymyr Zelensky and what you got out of this was the promise of a phone call, what are you thinking?
Well, he's going to want to know the details that
Indeed,
we
he
did
is.
not get to hear, right? Because they obviously talked about something for 2.5 hours. And mostly, just a small part, they didn't go to the wider delegation with all the economic people. So I think they probably focused mostly on Ukraine, despite the spin at the end. He's going to want to know those details. I want to know those. I think we all want to know those details, because I think his concern will be that President Trump maybe agreed to things that he will not be able to agree to, and the Ukrainian people will not be able to agree to. So that phone call that he promised, I think he wants a real readout. And the fact that we didn't get a real readout and the world didn't get a real readout and there were no questions asked, that suggests that it might not be good news for Zelensky.
So stay on that point. So ostensibly, the president of the United States calls the president of Ukraine and says, this is what Vladimir Putin and I had discussed. Here are the sticking points. Here's where I think there's room for negotiation, if indeed there was some type of agreement or even contours of an agreement. If, in fact, there are things that Donald Trump was pushing in that room that Volodymyr Zelensky says, I can't abide by that, what then?
I'm not sure. What then? I fear the president will just walk away and say, I tried. Kind of reminds me of what he did with Kim Jong-un the first time around. But one other thing I would just emphasize, when, again, listening through the translator, Putin just said his same talking points from 3.5 years ago. He said we have to get to the root causes of this conflict. That means we have to get rid of Volodymyr Zelensky. That's what Putin has been saying time and time again. He doubled down on it. He didn't show any flexibility. Again, from what I heard from the translator, not a single concession at all. And that suggests that he's not ready to negotiate in a serious way.